subject matter I think I'm most passionate about is the Canadian Rockies. And it's just the expanse, the sense of presence that I get. But I should go back. I should go back to the very beginning. Like when I started my photography, probably like everybody else, I started with 35 millimeter. And that was back in the early 70s. And then I saw a Time magazine article on Ansel Adams, and he had some of his work there with his 8x10, and I thought to myself, I gotta do that, because it was just the depth, the richness, the tone, everything you got with it was in a class by itself. The other thing I liked about that type of photography was, this was before digital even came in, but what I liked about it was what you see is what you get. There wasn't a lot of manipulation that you'd be doing at that point. So, and for me, truth in photography is important. So I graduated to a 4x5 and then a 5x7, and I finally got my 8x10. And what I realized was something at that point that made me really think about where I go from here, and that was that as I moved from 35 up to the larger format, something became obvious, and that was the sense of presence and the feeling of depth that you get in the photograph increased as you increase the format. And so I was particularly intrigued with the antiquarian process of platinum printing. And with platinum printing, you really don't get a chance to enlarge. Basically, the negative dictates the size of the print. So, what I liked about platinum printing was the fact that it even accentuated that sense of presence, the depth, the three-dimensionality, and the warm tones that you get with the palladium and the platinum in the mixture. It really, what happened was you could see that modern photography made with historical processes make for some really compelling imagery. So after that, I sort of moved into platinum printing, and I wanted to get platinum prints as large as I could get. Well, then I started looking at Dick Aronson's work, and he used a 12x20. And I thought to myself, well, there's a couple of things going on here. But I realized after I got my 12x20 that it's at the limit. I mean, I don't want to get a camera any bigger than that I need two people to put on a tripod. So 12x20 was it. I found I could probably backpack that thing about 3K would be about the limit for me with all the gear and tripods and everything. But there's something else about the 12x20 that was really, really important, but I didn't realize at the time. The aspect ratio is about 1.67, which approximates the golden rectangle. But go back to the Greeks and their compositions of where they did their architecture. The golden rectangle was extremely important to the way they designed everything. And what I found with the 12x20 was that everything just seemed to fit, whether it be architecture, industrial detritus, whatever you want to call it. That particular aspect ratio really brought everything together, but more importantly, especially for the work that I'm really passionate about, which is the Canadian Rockies, it combined so much. It gave you that sense of presence. Well, then about in the early 2000s, I met Bill Peters. And Bill Peters at that time was the CEO of the Calgary Science Center. And I said, you know, Bill, I really like to be able to enlarge this 12x20 negative. And he said, well, I just happen to have an old process camera in the basement. Maybe we could do something. And he actually built for me an enlarger that I can enlarge my 12x20 negs. And This was just spectacular, because now what happened was, well, the maximum paper that I had was the Ilford or the Foma, or the the Foma, the Forte paper at the time, and I could probably do a 3x enlargement, which would be about maybe use up most of 42 inches by about 72 inches, which will probably get. So what was interesting though was that now you could really, when you make an enlargement with a negative that size, the amount of information that's contained in a negative that size is almost approaching terabyte. And when you look at one of these prints, it's like you're standing on the vista of where the photographer took the picture. You can almost walk into it, was the sense that you get. So I quickly contacted Paul Kuhn, and I said, I got this idea for an exhibition. What do you think? He said, I love it. So in the early 2000s there, we got an exhibition together with these monster prints, and it was really, really phenomenal. I think everybody agreed that, yeah, it's just the sense of presence there, the depth that you get, the detail. For example, the snow, I think it's like you could almost reach into the snow and pick it up. It's alive, you know. So that's what we ended up doing, and that's why I've been shooting 12 by 20, because for all those reasons, you know, the depth, the field is the depth, the sense of presence that you get with it, the amount of information into it, the way the composition just comes together, and of course the availability of the film and paper, which, believe it or not, thanks to Kodak and Ilford, it's still available. So I guess in a nutshell, that's why I shoot 12-20. One of the things that you quickly realize when you're shooting large format is that you really don't know what you got until it starts to come out alive in the developer. What I found was that if I use a very, very dark green safe light for 3 to 5 seconds, I can sort of develop by inspection. And what I mean by that is that after about 3 to 5 minutes in the developer, then you can pick it out of the developer tray, and not the emulsion side, but the base side, and just view it the base side. And what you see is the highlights just starting to come through. This takes a bit of practice, but what happens at that point is that you can see when they just start to come through, you're pretty much done. And the idea at that point, what we're trying to accomplish there is we don't want to overdevelop it, we don't want to underdevelop it. On the other hand, yes, we know when we've metered it what it should be, but there's still a lot of variables there. So I prefer the development by inspection as a way, especially on these big negatives where you're holding at something that size. I mean, there's not much guesswork involved, where you can see how everything's starting to come together. And by building by inspection, I can actually get a lot better control than just blindly going and say 8 minutes and, you know, I know what I'm doing. The other thing that really made a difference too was the use of pyro. Pyro is a developer that was used way back in the 20s and the 30s, 1920s and 1930s, when silver started to become popular. And the advantage of pyro is quite a bit. It's threefold, I would say. The first thing is that it's a hardening developer, and hardens the emulsion. So it actually prevents the migration of the silver grains during the development process. The second thing is the accutance is extremely high with pyro. And the third thing is it's as the pyrogallic acid starts to oxidize, it turns the the gelatin and so on into sort of a yellowish tone to it. But the magic of that process is that the yellow is proportional to the density. In other words, your highlights have a greater concentration of the yellow stain than, for example, the shadows would. What happens there is that when you're printing on multigrade paper, it's almost like having a built-in filter for the highlights. So it's really, really advantageous in that respect to use the pyro. I think for me, the big advantage of black and white is it almost raises reality to an abstraction. And like, I don't shoot a lot of color. Probably the only time I do shoot color is maybe in the fall. If I see a scene that warrants the color, like a sunrise, sunset, I'll probably shoot it. But for me, the black and white is, I'm in control. And I control every aspect, from the way the film was composed, exposed, developed, and printed. I'm in control of the process every step of the way. I can't do that with color or any other digital process. And what I mean by that is that with silver gelatin papers, I get a richness of blacks and detail that I can't get anywhere else, especially when I go to the large negatives. You take a 12 by 20 negative with all that information on it, which is in hundreds of gigabytes, and you print it on a paper like silver gelatin paper, for example, Ilford multigrade or Forte or Foma. It's a continuous tone of blacks, as opposed to pixelated image, which I just can't stand. So I like the continuous tone, I like the detail, and it just helps to enhance this whole process of what I've been trying to do, which is convey that sense of presence. I just don't get that with digital. And I've never tried digital. I've seen a lot of it, absolutely no interest in it. I think there's two aspects to doing that. The first, of course, is that it's the timelessness of the photography. Like, I started doing this really quite some time ago. And there's just been so many changes in a lot of the really nice sites around the Rockies. It's so preservation of those areas in a photographic medium is one goal. The other goal is to present to the viewer something that's, the number of people that are doing this ultra-large format, you can probably count on two hands in Canada. And I don't think that the beauty of that process on silver gelatin paper is really appreciated by a lot of people. And I'm hoping to get enough of this work together so that we can have some traveling exhibitions of this work across Canada, possibly the United States, maybe internationally. Yeah, the other aspect is, of course, is to put together a book, a limited series, almost a collector's edition, a full-size 12 by 20 platinum prints, because that combines actually everything that we've been talking about. The historical feel to the imagery, the sort of the warm sepia tones to it, which also enhances that historical feel. The absolute extreme detail that you get, and even a platinum print, just 12 inches by 20 inches, still has that sense of presence where yes, I feel I can reach into that image. So that's, in the short term, those are my goals. The long term is just to preserve some of the beauty of this country and this, especially the Western Canadian Rockies. The combination of that ultra-large format photography with prints made by hand in that size, first of all, even if I made 2 or 3 of them, no 2 images are going to be the same. Each one is a very unique impression, because all this dodging and burning the sun, it's all done by hand, right? And so that's the one aspect, is that we want to show the beauty of what's possible when you combine these different technologies. For example, this in the 12 by 20 view camera, I mean, this is technology that goes back to the late 1800s or early 1800s, right? It's that type. The lenses I use mostly are made in Germany by Zeiss at probably the turn of the last century. Thankfully, like I said, I can still get film and paper at the size that I need. But when you combine all those things together, it's just a beauty that's untouchable by any other process. So I'm just going to continue doing that as long as I can. I mix my own chemistry. Because when I make these large prints, I use probably 15 liters of developer to cover something that size. So yeah, the whole process is unique. You don't push a button and make 10,000 copies. You might make 5. So I like the uniqueness, the beauty, the distinctive character of each one of these prints.